When I was recognized and brought back by the Shen family, the fake daughter had long married into a wealthy family and had a great relationship with her husband. Everyone envied them. Later she died unexpectedly while giving birth, and I entered the family as a stepmother. For these 5 years, I disciplined my stepson and managed the whole household. Even Lu Huan, who was usually cold, changed his view of me and even said he wanted to have a child of our own with me. Others said I had finally made it through and secured my position as the Marquis's wife until my stepson's birthday, when she cut up the clothes I sewed right in front of everyone and then threw herself into another woman's arms.
I don't really like these clothes. I'm still not used to you being my mother. Sister Meng looks a lot like my mother. Father and I both like Sister Meng very much.
I felt a sense of relief. Okay, having been away from home for a full 5 years, my child also misses me very much and has already written many letters urging me to come home.
What did you say?
Realizing I didn't act like before, putting on a motherly air to educate him, Lu Mingxuan was stunned. Doubt flashed across his small face. Then, not knowing what he thought of, he straightened his back and smiled proudly.
Everyone in the manor says so. Are you a little worried? Worried that Sister Meng will take away everyone's attention?
Seeing me have no reaction, he became even more arrogant, deliberately showing off the white sachet hanging from his waist.
The sachet Sister Meng gave me is the best birthday present I've received. Sister Meng looks like my mother and can play the tunes my mother left behind. I really like Sister Meng. You are very different from her. You are always steady and serious, always feeling a bit dull. You always nag me about many things on normal days. Father also likes Sister Meng very much. Everyone wants to be close to Sister Meng.
Today was Lu Mingxuan's birthday. I had been up before dawn, busy with preparations. Just as the banquet began, a maid ran over to report that the young heir was throwing a tantrum. When I stepped into Lu Mingxuan's courtyard, the first thing I saw was a floor covered in shredded fabric. It was the new clothes I had painstakingly sewn for him. Lu Mingxuan was lounging in Meng Yueru's arms, being gently coaxed by her. The two of them looked exactly like a picture of a loving mother and a filial son. I didn't say anything. I simply bent down and piece by piece picked up the scraps of cloth from the ground. According to folk customs, when a child celebrates their 6th birthday, if they wear the 100 birds bringing joy clothes, hand sewn by their mother, they will have a lifetime of peace and smooth sailing. The extremely precious silk, the lifelike embroidery of 100 birds, exquisite without a single flaw, was now nothing but trash on the floor. Before leaving, Meng Yueru turned to look at me, a provocative smile playing on her lips. That smile overlapped with the face in my memory. Even the mole at the corner of her eye was exactly the same.
Madam, the young heir has gone too far.
My maid, Biyun, shed tears of anger, her heart aching for me.
To finish sewing these clothes, you rush stitch by stitch under the oil lamp every night, stitch by stitch, spending a full 3 months to complete it, and the young heir just ruined it like this.
I couldn't help but smile. Silly girl, what is there to cry about? There is nothing to feel bad about. As the mistress of the Lu family and Lu Mingxuan's mother in name, I did nothing wrong. That is enough. After cleaning up, I practiced my familiar routine, put on a proper smile, and returned to the banquet to continue entertaining today's guests. As the sky grew dark and the guests all left, I let out a deep sigh. When I returned to the courtyard, a young maid greeted me happily. Madam, the Marquis is waiting for you. I gave a slight nod, but my footsteps paused for a moment. Behind me, the young maids were chatting excitedly. The Marquis, for the 3rd time this month, has entered our madam's room. Our madam has finally made it.
That woman surnamed Meng. So what if she looks like the late madam? You are the Marquis manners. True, mistress.
Once you give birth to the Marquis's own flesh and blood, no one will ever overpower our madam.
I pushed the door open and entered the room. The man was sitting by the window, holding the travelogue I had casually tossed on the table. He wore a dark blue robe, his eyes cold, and his aura extremely noble. It has been a full 5 years. I've looked at this man for 5 years, yet he still feels like a stranger.
What happened today? I heard about it.
He put down the book and turned to look at me.
It was Mingxuan's birthday. You should have accommodated his wishes more. Why bother arguing with him? It is just a ruined piece of clothing. If he doesn't want it, just throw it away. Why make a scene in front of the guests and let others see us as a joke?
I didn't say a word, walking straight to the desk, picking up the cup and taking a huge gulp of cold water. Lu Huan frowned, as if he disapproved of my behavior. I had no intention of arguing with him. Setting down the water cup, I said softly. Lu Huan furrowed his brows tightly, his words undoubtedly carrying the tone of a master's reprimand.
You are the elder and the mistress of the house. If Mingxuan lacks manners toward you, it is also because you haven't disciplined him strictly enough.
Everything the Marquis says is correct. It is entirely my fault. I was born in the countryside and have no real skills. I truly cannot bear the heavy responsibility of guiding the heir. Lu Huan stared blankly for a moment, not expecting me to admit my mistake. The look in his eyes as he stared at my face carried a hint of scrutiny and study. Just as the situation reached a stalemate, Auntie Jiang from the old madam's room arrived. I secretly breathed a sigh of relief, but when I saw the bowl of soup Auntie Jiang was holding, my heart immediately sank.
Madam, the old madam felt bad that you were tired today, so she specially ordered this tonic to be brewed and sent it over to nourish your body.
A strong, bitter smell spread throughout the room. They called it a tonic, but it was actually a fertility potion.
It is getting late. Hoping the Marquis and Madam rest early. The old madam also said, Madam doesn't need to get up early tomorrow morning.
These past few days, the old madam had gone from half-concealed pressure to straightforward coercion. The room door closed tightly. Lu Huan walked toward me, his tone gentle.
Forget it. It is just a ruined dress. Tomorrow, I'll have the embroidery shop make a few more. Sujin, it is high time our family had another child of our own. The old madam has been hoping for a long time.
Married into the Marquis's estate for a full 5 years, Lu Huan and I were still a fake couple in name only. He was hopelessly in love with Shen Yingyue, refusing to enter my room on his own accord, even if it killed him. Perhaps because I was too submissive, putting my heart into everything I did. Lu Huan gradually softened his temper toward me. He used to treat me like heir, but later he was willing to come sit in my room on his own. It made it seem as if he had finally accepted me. This wife forced upon him. Seeing his fingers naturally reach for my collar, I suddenly spoke up. My lord, sisters Yunlian and Yuelian have been here for quite a few days. If you have some free time, you should go see them. Those were the concubines the old madam had decided to take in for Lu Huan right after Meng Yueru entered the household.
Shen Sujin, you are my true wife.
Scalding hot breath sprayed against my neck. I turned my head slightly to dodge and continued. In 2 days, it will be Sister Yingyue's death anniversary. How does my lord plan to arrange it? The lustful fire in his eyes vanished in the blink of an eye. Sure enough, Shen Yingyue was his fatal weakness. Just a casual mention was enough to make Lu Huan's expression change. He let go of his hand, pulling away from me, returning to his usual cold demeanor. My rejection was too obvious. A young master, like Lu Huan, has always enjoyed being fawned over by everyone. There are only things he doesn't want. No one would dare to repeatedly reject him. Besides, his taking the initiative this time was already unprecedented. In his eyes, being able to bear his children and secure the position of the lady of the house is a favor bestowed upon me. I should kneel and thank him for his grace and serve him with all my heart. Lu Huan put on a cold face.
Shen Sujin, don't forget your status.
Status? I looked up at the man in front of me. The night I married into the Marquis's mansion, he said the exact same thing.
My wife is only Yingyue. You need to recognize your status.
Of course I have always remembered my status. Seeing nothing, hearing nothing, asking nothing, saying nothing. Normally, besides taking care of Lu Mingxuan and serving the old madam, I devoted myself entirely to the household. Various chores, big and small. Over the past 5 years, I believe I have done my utmost and never dared to overstep my bounds. I resisted the urge to raise my hand and wipe the sticky feeling from my neck and said calmly, back then, to save my birth mother, I agreed to the old madam's request to marry in and care for the heir and signed a 5-year agreement. Now the 5 years are up. The heir has started his schooling and is being taught by several tutors. It is time for me to leave. Furthermore, now that Lady Meng is here, the heir likes Lady Meng much more. To be his mother. If he can get his wish, the heir will be very happy too. If I sensibly step aside, I suppose everyone will be happy. Back then, after Shen Yingyue passed away, Lu Huan was dead set against remarrying. Old Madame Lu approached me privately. She wanted me to marry into the Marquis's mansion to take care of the young heir. I am a daughter of the Shen family and Shen Yingyue's sister in name. As the heir Lu Mingxuan's aunt, I was the best candidate. The Shen family couldn't bear to let go of the Marquis's mansion's influence and couldn't wait to send me into the Hao Ae family to maintain the marriage alliance between the two families. I refused, but old Madame Lu came prepared. She held a miraculously effective medicine bestowed by the emperor that could treat my biological mother's illness. When I was born, I was secretly switched by my biological father's favorite concubine. Before that concubine died, she found her conscience and told my biological mother the truth, knowing that the daughter she had loved and raised was a fake. while her own flesh and blood from a 10-month pregnancy was nowhere to be found. My mother fell severely ill and nearly died. Over the years, my mother cried herself blind and dragged her ailing body around, all just to find me. The Shen family thought she was too mad and forbade her from searching, so she searched in secret. She spent all her money and sold her dowry, but never once thought of giving up on me. With great difficulty, she finally found me. During the half year after I returned to the Shen family, she felt she owed me too much. She wished she could bring all the good things right to me. She hovered around me every day, and even at night, she would watch over me until I fell asleep before she could bear to leave. Unfortunately, our bond as mother and daughter was too brief. My mother's body was completely worn out, and her days were numbered. The Shen family had long given up on treating her. She was the biological mother I had lost and found, the one who gave birth to me, loved me, and cherished me. How could I give up on her? The miracle medicine in old Madame Lu's hands couldn't cure my mother's illness, but it could give her a few more years to live. But my mother treasured me like a jewel. If she knew that to get the medicine for her, I married Lu Huan as a replacement wife, I'm afraid she would rather die. I had to say I liked Lu Huan and that I wanted to marry him. With that one phrase, my mother finally nodded. On our wedding night that year, when Lu Huan said those words, telling me to know my place, I told him the truth, telling him about my agreement with old Madame Lu. He didn't believe it at all. At that time, I had no idea that the words I said to my mother about liking him had already reached Lu Huan's ears. To him, no matter what reason, I married into the family for, in the end, I had taken his beloved wife's place.
You're throwing a tantrum because I brought Miss Meng back.
He suddenly said, his tone certain, and his expression even showing a hint of joy. I gave him a strange look. Miss Meng is quite nice. She is more suited than I am to do the duties of the Marquis's wife. I pointed to the neatly stacked account books on the table. The account books have been sorted out. Tomorrow, I will hand them over to Nanny Chu. With her around, Miss Meng will also quickly be able to take over the miscellaneous affairs of the Marquis's inner courtyard. Only then did Lu Huan realize that I was not acting out of spite.
Shen Sujin, do you think the position of the mistress of my Lu family is something anyone can sit in?
He stared at me with an ugly expression, looking quite as if he were gnashing his teeth. I didn't understand where his anger came from. Relying on a face that resembled Shen Yingyue's, Meng Yueru had made Lu Huan lose his soul. Disregarding others' opinions, he brought her home. In just a few short days, she had won the hearts of Lu Huan and his son. Over these past few years, aside from me, his wife in name only, Lu Huan hadn't taken any concubines to bed, nor had he sought out women outside. Even those 2 concubines were sent over by old Madame Lu. On the day Lu Huan brought Meng Yueru back, it was normal for a man to have 3 wives and 4 concubines. Someone like Lu Huan, who had such deep feelings for his deceased wife, was indeed rare. Finally, he had found the shadow of his beloved woman. Those few points of resemblance were enough for him to make up for everything. The best fish and meat in the house, silk fabrics, and all the precious items were all sent right to Meng Yueru. He settled her in Lanyue Pavilion, the courtyard where the Marquis's wife lived. Shen Yingyue used to live there, and now Meng Yueru lived there. But since I entered the door, I didn't even have the right to step inside.
You raised Mingxuan with your own hands. He used to treat you as his own mother. Are you really willing to let him call someone else mother?
Without warning, a scene flashed through my mind. It was the winter 2 years ago. My own mother ultimately couldn't pull through. I only remember the snowstorm that day was extremely heavy, a vast expanse of white. My heart was terrifyingly empty. It felt like I had slept for a long time. In my days, a very small figure stayed by my side. He imitated the way I used to take care of him, holding a medicine bowl to my lips. Mother, take your medicine. I remained unconscious, and he cried anxiously, Mother, I won't be naughty anymore. He was so small, yet he relied on me wholeheartedly. But later, just a few words from outsiders, and he completely believed them. Because of that, he distanced himself from me and resented me. I came to the Marquis's mansion to take care of him. Ultimately, I am no different from the servants working by his side. This fragile mother-son bond is nothing worth holding on to. I revealed a faint smile. You must be joking, Marquis. I know my place. Lu Huan and I parted on bad terms. Soon, the old madam received the news and sent someone to call me over. When I arrived, the old madam had just come out of the Buddhist hall. When she asked me to sit down, I took a step forward and knelt before her. Grandmother, Sujin still begs grandmother to fulfill your earlier promise. The old lady's hand, pinching her prayer beads, stopped. She remained silent for a long time before sighing and asking me,
You still want to go?
Yes.
All these years, everyone in the household has been doing well. And Mingxuan has also been raised strong and healthy by you. It is all to your credit. Huaner has also taken a liking to you. Even if those bad women enter the family, with me backing you up, no one can shake your position. Have you really never thought about staying?
My tone was firm. My mind is made up. In old Madame Lu's eyes, as long as I consummated the marriage with Lu Huan and gave birth to my own biological child, she could tie me firmly to this family. Despite her overt and covert pressure, she never expected that from the day I entered the door, my thought of leaving had never wavered. After a long while, the old woman let out a long sigh, the sound trembling, like a taut old rope, dull and weak.
Forget it, forget it. You may go.
She waved her hand, closing her eyes, not wanting to pay attention to me. I sincerely kowtowed to her. Although it was a mutually beneficial transaction back then, that immortal medicine from the palace did allow my birth mother to live a few more years. I have always been grateful in my heart. Coming out of the old lady's courtyard, without paying attention, I wandered over to Manhwa Pavilion. The usually closed courtyard gate was wide open, and bursts of laughter came from inside. Just as I was about to turn around and leave, a pebble was thrown at my feet. Lu Mingxuan was climbing a tree, clapping his hands with a look of regret.
Why did you come here? Father ordered before that no one is allowed to enter here casually. Did you know that father gave Lanyua Pavilion to Sister Meng to live in? Did you come here looking for Sister Meng? This place already has a master, so you don't need to worry about it anymore. From now on, I hope Sister Meng can be my family.
I nodded. Then congratulations. I hope your dream comes true soon. Lu Mingxuan's smug little face finally showed some reaction. He looked at me blankly, staring as if he still wanted to say something. I was just about to take a detour when I suddenly heard Biyun's excited shout, "Madam, the young master came to pick you up himself." Immediately after, a cry full of longing drifted into my ears.
Mother.
Before I could see clearly who it was, someone crashed right into my arms. A small body hugged me tightly.
Mother, Zhou'er missed you so much.
Joe? My eyes widened, and with trembling hands, I cupped the little face in front of me. The warmth in my palms reminded me that this was definitely not a dream. The little baby I thought about every day had really appeared right in front of me.
It is me, Mother. Zhou'er came specifically to take you home. Mother, are you happy?
Separated for 5 years, the child who used to only reach my legs has now grown to my shoulders, becoming a young man. My nose stung. Holding back my tears, I hugged him tightly. Zhou'er, Mother missed you too. I thought about you day and night. I was immersed in the joy of reuniting with Zhou'er until I heard Lu Mingxuan's angry questioning.
Who is he?
Lu Mingxuan stood on a tree branch, looking shocked, glaring fiercely at Zhou'er and me. I smiled and answered, "He calls me mother. He is definitely my biological son."
You actually have another child.
With red eyes, he yelled at me because he was too agitated. His body swayed among the branches, as if he would fall at any moment. The maids under the tree all turned pale, each stretching out their arms, desperately begging him to slide down quickly. In the past, I would have been like the maids, anxiously waiting under the tree. At first, I would patiently and gently coax him down. If he didn't listen, I would put on a stern face and scold him a bit. I don't know since when Lu Mingxuan refused to call me mother. He began to hate me, blame me, and wished I were dead. But right now, he asked me,
He is your biological son. Then, what about me? What am I?
Zhou'er poked his head out from my arms, tilted his head, and said cheerfully,
Of course it means you're brainless. Not just anyone can be my mother's son. You're just lucky. You stumbled upon this blessing but didn't treasure it. Too stupid.
I smiled and tapped his nose, just like when he was little. The familiar gesture made Zhou'er's eyes turn red.
Mother, can we leave now?
I wiped the tears from the corners of my eyes and nodded firmly. Let's go. Let's go.
You're leaving. Where are you going?
Lu Mingxuan's voice carried a crying tone, stubbornly interrogating me.
Where are you going?
Seeing that I ignored him, his voice slowly became piercing.
You're not allowed to leave. Do you not want me anymore?
I didn't turn back. I am no longer your mother. A heavy thud of someone falling to the ground, mixed with the maid's terrified screams.
Here. The hair fell from the tree.
Don't go. Don't go. Mother.
The heart-wrenching cries struck my heart. My feet did not stop, pulling Zhou'er along. Walking very fast, we stepped out of the main gate and got into a carriage waiting outside. The wheels turned rapidly. The carriage left the alley, ran onto the main street, and rushed toward the city gates. After the carriage smoothly exited the city gates, leaning against the carriage board, I let out a huge sigh of relief. Patting Zhou'er's head, I smiled and said, "We can finally go home." Just as I finished speaking, from behind came a burst of rapid hoofbeats. Zhou'er was the first to lift the the carriage curtain. Then, he smiled and comforted me.
Don't worry, with me here, plus old here's driving skills, which are the best in the world, we'll definitely be fine.
I looked at him warmly. The tiny toddler who once clung to my leg, crying and begging to be held, had truly grown up.
Shen Sujin.
A voice as cold as ice rang out.
Stop the carriage.
I sighed and told Uncle He to stop. Lifting the curtain, Lu Huan was looking down from high above, sitting on horseback, holding a longbow, exuding a chilling aura. I reached out and pulled back Brother He and Zhou'er, who were shielding me. Why must you do this, Marquis?
Shen Sujin. Come home with me right now. I can pretend none of this mess ever happened. You will still be the primary wife, the mistress of my Lu family.
Lu Huan suppressed his anger.
If you despise Miss Meng, I will have someone send her away immediately. If you want to sleep in the moon embracing pavilion, the moon embracing pavilion will be entirely under your control as long as you return to the manor with me.
I hadn't expected Lu Huan to swallow his pride and chase after me. Perhaps over these past few years, I had saved him so much trouble that he found me useful, or perhaps in his mind, whether he hated me before or now looked at me in a slightly different light, I was supposed to obediently accept it and obey.
If you insist on leaving,
he gripped the longbow in his hand tightly, his voice trembling with agitation.
There is no turning back once the bow is drawn. If you regret it in the future and beg to come back, it will be absolutely impossible. My Marquis of Chengdi's household is not a place anyone can enter at will, nor slip away from as they please.
You worry too much, Marquis, I replied calmly. Since I have stepped out the door, I will absolutely never look back. Lu Huan gripped the bow, his fingers locking tighter and tighter around the arrow.
Mingxuan fell from the tree branch and broke his leg. He has been crying and howling for his mother. Can you really be so heartless as to ignore him?
Lu Huan stared at me intently, trying to find the slightest hint of submission on my face. I remained completely unfazed. The heir's life is entirely in the hands of the doctors. If I go, I don't know how to treat illnesses. It would purely be causing trouble. I still have family waiting for me. Marquis, farewell. As soon as the words stopped, there was a sudden swish. He was too impulsive. His hand slipped, and a cold arrow grazed past the base of my ear, nailing firmly into the wooden board of the carriage behind me. The tail of the arrow vibrated with a buzzing sound, cold and ruthless, exactly like the kind of person Lu Huan was.
Shen Sujin, you will absolutely regret this. I'll wait for you to come crawling back to beg me.
Lu Huan's face darkened, and the back of the hand gripping the reins bulged with veins. The large horse sensed its master's suppressed fury, reared its head and neighed wildly, then galloped away like a whirlwind, the sound of hooves fading into the distance, like thunder, echoing through the quiet street. Without stopping for a long time, I let out a long sigh of relief, wiped the sweat from my palms, and finally felt completely at ease. Lu Huan is arrogant. Now that he is willing to let me go, he won't lower himself to mess with me again. Brother He, let's go. Let's go home. The carriage continued outward. How could the ever-free Win ever be willing to be trapped in a broken cage? 5 years. I can finally go home. In the eastern courtyard, maids and older female servants knelt all over the ground, every single one of them pale-faced. The young master was seriously injured, having broken his leg. For these working servants, escaping a heavy penalty wouldn't save them from some punishment. They all thought the same thing. If Madame were still here, if only Madame were here, the absurd incident of the heir climbing a tree and falling from it would never have happened. In the past, when the heir was mischievous, Madame never blindly spoiled him. She would always stand there with a gentle yet firm attitude. The heir had no choice but to obey. Before, the heir was also very affectionate toward Madame, but who knows since when the heir's temper changed and he no longer stayed close to Madame. Inside the room, the child lying on the large bed kept his eyes tightly shut, sweating profusely. In his mouth,
Mother.
Lu Mingxuan had a dream. In the dream, he didn't break his leg. When he fell from the tree, a pair of gentle hands caught him. That clear voice echoed in his ears. Didn't I tell you before? Never put yourself in a dangerous place. You have to protect yourself. If you fall and get hurt, no one can suffer the pain for you, even though it didn't hurt. He cried.
Mother, I thought you didn't want me anymore.
How could that be? She gently wiped away his tears. No mother would ever abandon her own child. The scene suddenly changed. He pushed her away, scolding.
Who do you think you are? What right do you have to control me?
He knocked over the food she brought, cursed her for taking his birth mother's place, and told her to get lost. He cut up the clothes she had sewn for him with her own hands, leaned into another woman's embrace, and laughed triumphantly at her.
You don't deserve to be my mother. I want Sister Meng to be my mother.
At the end of the dream, it was the sight of her back as she held another child's hand and turned to walk away. He was in so much pain, the pain of a broken leg. His whole body hurt, making him unable to hold back the cry.
Mother,
His loud crying failed to make her stop. She walked faster and faster, without the slightest hesitation, as if she had finally put down a burden she had carried for a long time, and there was nothing worth looking back for. Lu Mingxuan slowly opened his eyes, staring blankly at the bed. At the hanging sachet, he had a special constitution, and every summer night, he always attracted mosquitoes and bugs, getting bitten all over, leaving red, swollen welts that were both painful and itchy. She got a prescription from who knows where, made it into sachets, and hung them all around the bed so he could sleep peacefully. Those little things he had long grown used to, and never paid attention to, all rushed into his mind. He remembered her with her head bowed, stitch by stitch, looking so gentle as she sewed the pouches. Nanny Chu always said that his biological mother was a talented woman who caused a sensation in the capital, unmatched by anyone, the very model of a noblewoman. But to him, his birth mother was nothing more than that one in his father's study, a cold yellowing painting, unlike the one hanging in his father's study, that cold yellowing portrait. Ever since he was old enough to understand, the one who would stay by his bed all night when he was sick, feed him medicine bite by bite, and feed him his meals, the one who would shape his food into the little bunnies he liked, so he wouldn't be a picky eater anymore, and when he naughtily played tricks on his teacher, the one who would scold him with a dark face, was that woman he later came to hate. He was supposed to hate her. She was always forcing him to study, to see the one he didn't like, that rigid and strict teacher. Nanny Chu felt very sorry for him, saying he didn't need to suffer so much. He was the young Marquis, and everything in this house belonged entirely to him. Nanny Chu always said that his father mentioned his birth mother less and less. No wonder that woman was so good at bewitching people. Nanny Chu also said that his father was going to have a child with her, her very own flesh and blood. That child would steal everything that belonged to him. She will have her own child. Then, what does that make her? In her ears was Nanny Chu's wailing and noisy crying.
Oh, my little ancestor. You've suffered so much. How will this old servant ever have the face to see the late madam?
Followed by a cold sneer. It was Meng Yueru.
What are you howling for? If you have no face to see her, then just lose your life now. Always talking about someone who has been gone for 5 years. Since you miss her so much, why don't you go down and keep her company?
Meng Yueru fiddled with the new bracelet on her wrists, completely losing her previous gentle and refined appearance, as if she had completely taken off some disguise. Nanny Chu glared at her, dumbfounded.
You. And to think I thought you were a good person, who could replace the late madam in taking care of the heir. I see you're no better than Miss Shen Sujin. You women always love to seduce the Marquis. Oh, my poor madam. Why did you leave so early, letting this bunch off so easily?
Heh, who cares?
Slowly standing up, she glanced at Lu Mingxuan before leaving, muttering to herself.
Sure enough, little brats are the most annoying.
Nanny Chu was crying when suddenly she felt the atmosphere wasn't right. Turning around, she met a pair of gloomy, cold eyes.
My lord.
She trembled all over in fear, like an old hen grabbed by the neck. The look Lu Huan gave Nanny Chu was like looking at a block of ice.
Who gave you the nerve to gossip about the mistress of the Marquis's mansion behind her back? Men, drag her out and kick her out of the Marquis's family, never to be hired again. Notify all the prominent households in the capital. No one is allowed to employ her.
Spare my life, Marquis. This old servant was only trying to protect the late madam. Here, save me, heir.
To Nanny Chu's cries for help, Lu Mingxuan didn't even spare a glance. He looked behind his father.
Father, where is mother? Did you bring mother back?
Lu Huan was quiet for a moment, then said,
She will return.
His words seemed meant for Lu Mingxuan, but also for himself. That is right. She would definitely come back. Outside the Marquis's household, Shen Sujin was nothing. She had wandered outside for many years. Aside from Madame Shen, who passed away from illness, no one in the Shen family cared about her, much less tolerated her. She would definitely beg him and turn back. Lu Huan suppressed that trace of losing control in his heart once again. The carriage traveled for 7 days, finally arriving in Wanzhou. Lifting the carriage curtain, familiar street scenes filled my eyes. Going a little further, we reached Wutong Alley. Auntie Li, who sold flatbread at the alley entrance, was familiarly kneading dough. The auntie selling red bean cakes across the street was shouting loudly. The air was filled with familiar scents.
Sujin, you're back.
The sharp-eyed auntie saw me and warmly came over, stuffing the red bean cake in her hand into mine without a word, smiling as she said,
Did you miss Auntie's cooking?
Auntie Lai also bent over, handing over a steaming flatbread, muttering,
Why have you gotten so thin?
the familiar faces before me, and the undisguised care in their eyes, made my eyes instantly well up with tears. It was as if I had merely gone on a long trip. After wandering for 5 years, I was finally home. The carriage continued forward. Just as it stopped in front of the courtyard, the door was pushed open from the inside with a smack. Several children all rushed out.
Mother, you're finally home. Brother Joe really didn't lie. He brought Mother home. Mother, I missed you so much.
Yao Yao rushed at the very front. The 12-year-old girl was almost taller than me, but she still dove into my arms just like when she was little, crying with snot and tears all over. Xiao Shi followed behind her, still holding an embroidery hoop in her hand, her eyes red, holding back her tears. The youngest, Sibao, had just turned 5. When I left that year, he was still nursing. Now he had grown sturdy and strong. Seeing that he couldn't catch up to his sisters, he panicked and took a tumble, but still grinned happily. I smiled, bent down, picked up Sibao, and hugged Yao Yao and Xiao Shi again.
Mother is home.
I smiled and answered them one by one. Mother is home. Sister-in-law Hui stood in the back, turned her face away, and wiped the corners of her eyes.
Miss is finally home. It is good that you're home. It is good that you're home.
Sister-in-law Hui. I saw the few white hairs growing on her head, and my nose tingled. These past few years I've bled you and brother he. These 5 years, I had relied entirely on the two of them to raise this group of children.
It is no trouble.
She waved her hand.
The children have all grown up. They're all very obedient, especially Zhou'er and Xiangyao. They can all help out with chores now.
Standing in the courtyard, looking at the smiling faces of the children, my heart felt a burst of warmth. This is my true home. Before going to the Shen family, I lived here every day. It used to be just me and my adoptive mother. After my adoptive mother died of illness, I took in these children one after another. They were all orphans with no father or mother. I brought them home to be their family, just like when I was little, and my adoptive mother took me in, giving me a home, running a small embroidery shop. She raised me. I will also put my heart into raising these children into adults. Life went back to the way it was before. In the morning, the whole family would sit at the table and finish breakfast. The 2 older ones would go to school to study. The 2 younger ones would play at home, and I would run to the embroidery shop to find work. It was busy, but peaceful, until the faces of the Lu father and son flashed before my eyes. The peaceful good days right now were completely shattered. It was just the beginning of autumn, so I made a few sets of new clothes for all the children. The dowry my birth mother gave me was quite a lot. Enough so I wouldn't have to worry about food and drink for the rest of my life. I could also focus on raising these children without being as short on money as before. I was sitting in the courtyard mending clothes when Biyun rushed in from outside. Her face was pale, looking as if she had seen a ghost. Seeing Biyun's panicked look, I smiled and asked, Did Sibao catch bugs again and scare you?
Madam, I saw the Marquis and the heir.
My smile faded. Biyun had been with me for 5 years. She was supposed to stay at the Marquis's estate. In the 3rd month after I moved out, Biyun used the silver I gave her to buy back her contract of servitude. Then she traveled non-stop to come find me. Biyun told me a lot about the mess after I left the Marquis's estate. Lu Mingxuan broke his leg and lay in bed for a long time, crying and making a fuss every day, shouting for his father to bring me back. Meng Yueru took care of Lu Mingxuan for 3 days, then stole a lot of valuables and ran away. For some reason, Lu Huan didn't send anyone to catch her. Seeing those 2 familiar yet estranged faces again, I suddenly felt like it was all from a past life. I sighed inwardly. Why did they have to show up again? Just like this, you go your way, and I go mine. A clean break, with no trouble or ties. Wouldn't that be fine? That grand blue cloth carriage completely blocked the narrow alley. Lu Huan waited at the very front, dressed entirely in a black robe, his face showing exhaustion. The look he gave me was extremely complex. Without time to think much of it, my gaze shifted behind him to Lu Mingxuan. He had grown taller and much thinner. His face lacked its former arrogant demeanor. Meeting my gaze, his eyes instantly turned red, and he couldn't help but run toward me.
Mother!
In a daze, I seemed to see in my memory that little toddler who was just learning to walk. He was just like this, reaching out his hands to me, mumbling mother. He was so small, it made one unable to hold back. Pitying him for growing up without a mother, I only wanted to pull him into my arms and keep him safe. This mother from Tianjin was spoken in a tiny voice, timidly, as if afraid of startling something. I ignored him, just staring at Lu Huan. I wonder what brings the Marquis here.
Sujin,
He called my name, his voice heavy, actually carrying a hint of affection.
I've come to take you home.
My expression was cold, and the distance seemed to sting him. He stared at me intently, his gaze deep and heavy, finally revealing his true feelings.
The Lu family needs you. Mingxuan needs you. I need you too.
This sentence, Lu Huan spoke with difficulty. I am not someone who doesn't understand matters between men and women. I could certainly detect the slight change in Lu Huan's attitude toward me. In the past, I wholeheartedly took care of Lu Mingxuan, managed the household chores, and served his elderly grandmother. Unless I had to show my face, I would never appear in front of Lu Huan, even deliberately avoiding him. Perhaps I was very different from what he had imagined. I don't know from which day. Those eyes that looked at me, always with a bit of mockery and annoyance, changed. He started taking the initiative to chat with me. One time, when he saw that collection of Li Xiao's poems on my desk, joy flashed in his eyes.
You also love reading elderly's poetry?
Occasionally, when he came across the chess game I set up in the pavilion, the praise on his face was undisguised. Gradually, after work, he would make a special detour to hand me red bean cakes from Qingfeng restaurant, and during the Qixi festival, he would bring me a gold hairpin shaped like a butterfly. None of those things were what I truly wanted. They were all bought according to Shen Yingyue's past tastes. Later, I rewarded them all to the servants, or locked them in the Marquis's storehouse. My actions, falling into his eyes, seemed to him like I didn't know what was good for me. The woman he had never looked up to was actually pushing him away repeatedly. He wanted to remind me that the position of the Marquis's wife, the status of Lu Huan's wife, wasn't exclusively mine. Unfortunately, he didn't expect that all his fussing was exactly what I wanted. Now, he was bending his back, softening his stance toward me, hoping I would turn around, but I was carefully recalling from which day I had carelessly given him the illusion that as long as he softened toward me, I would obediently return to that position that didn't belong to me. But I don't care about you at all. I'm telling you, this right here is my home. Lu Huan opened his mouth but couldn't squeeze out a single word. Lu Mingxuan desperately tugged at my sleeve, his eyes brimming with tears like an abandoned puppy.
Mother, I was wrong.
His tears rolled down.
I shouldn't have listened to outsiders' nonsense and wrongly blamed you. I shouldn't have made you angry. Shouldn't have bullied you. Mother, I was wrong. Please, come home with me.
I looked at him, and that slight ripple in my heart quickly returned to calm. When the child you raised with your own hands points at your face and curses you, how could it not hurt? But that bit of pain surfaced quickly and dissipated just as fast. I had stopped caring about him a long time ago. Lu Mingxuan. I crouched down, looking him in the eyes. Do you know why I married into the Marquis's estate? He nodded while crying, then shook his head, his eyes filled with confusion. I did it to save my own mother. Not for your father, nor to covet the position of the Marquis's wife, and certainly not for you. He asked me between sobs.
Then in the past, how good you were to me. Was it all just an act?
His falling tears wet the hem of my clothes. I treated you well, purely out of pity, because you grew up without a mother. If it were any other child, I would treat them exactly the same. Lu Mingxuan trembled all over from crying, stubbornly gripping the corner of my clothes.
Mother.
I stood up straight, wanting to pull his hand away.
Mother. Dinner is ready. Hurry back inside to eat.
Xiaoxi ran out to find me, with Sibao following closely behind her.
Mother!
Sibao ran over on his short legs, slapping Lu Mingxuan's hand away. His little voice was fierce. Lu Mingxuan.
Who are you? Why must you grab onto my mother? Why must you call my mother? Mother, don't you have your own mother?
Being hit by a child who was a head shorter than him left him stunned, even forgetting to cry. Yao Yao and Zhou'er also ran out, protecting me from the front, shouting at the top of their lungs.
No one is going to take away our mother.
I patted Yao Yao and Zhou'er's tense backs and bent down to pick up Sibao. It is okay. They are just here to ask for directions. Let's go. Let's go inside to eat.
Sujin.
Lu Huan's voice was dry.
Are you just going to run away like this? Aren't you going to ask if Mingxuan's leg is better? He broke his leg and lay in bed for a full 3 months, calling for his mother every day.
I sighed inwardly, stopped my steps, and instructed Zhou'er and Yao Yao to lead the children inside first. Marquis. I didn't even turn my head. He was calling for his mother. The noble young master of the Marquis's estate is not lacking a mother.
But you raised him for 5 years.
I've raised more than just him. Up ahead, Zhou'er and Yao Yao were each holding a child's hand. The two children kept turning their heads as they walked, staring at me pitifully, terrified that I would suddenly run away again. A smile hung on my lips. I turned and said, "Look, Marquis. This group of children, I raised them all. Some I raised for 5 years. some for only 1 year, before I went far away. But there wasn't a single day that they didn't miss me, didn't think of me, even though they are small. They know when someone treats them well, truly treats them well, without coveting anything from them, without planning to take anything from them, just because we are a family that can always trust each other and rely on each other. Lu Mingxuan is not lacking a mother, and he certainly isn't lacking servants to do the work. But these children of mine, they only recognize me. I stared intently into Lu Huan's eyes. Marquis, please go back.
But what about me?
Lu Huan stood rooted to the spot, his tall frame actually revealing a hint of dejection.
5 years of marriage. Did you truly never have any feelings for me? Are you really just going to abandon us like this?
As our eyes met, the thoughts in his eyes were completely exposed: confusion, regret, and defiance.
I admit defeat. In the past, I neglected you and ignored you. As long as you're willing to turn back, I will make it up to you. From now on, I will trust you, value you, and absolutely never mistreat you.
I stared at him, and my mind suddenly recalled that day. That day was Shen Yue's birthday. Just like before, he locked himself in the study. His friend came to visit him and saw him holding onto a wine bottle, refusing to let go. The friend sighed and tried to persuade him.
Your current wife, although she is the daughter the Shen family found halfway, looks honest and steady to me. She is a good match for you. The person is already gone. Brother Lu, you should forget the past and live a good life with the person in front of you.
Holding the hangover soup, I waited outside the door and heard Lu Huan's voice, tinged with the smell of alcohol, filled with undisguised disgust.
A wild girl who popped out of nowhere. What the hell is she? She actually wants to replace Meng Yueru. Marrying her is the stain of my life. My heart already left, along with Meng Yueru.
That night, Lu Huan was dead drunk. There was no shortage of people to serve him, including me. Auntie Zhang, under the old madam's orders, shoved the hangover soup into my hands and pushed me into the study. That was my first time. Stepped into Lu Huan's study. The study had no lamps lit, and moonlight slipped in through the window cracks, illuminating the portraits that filled the entire room. The Shen Yueru in the paintings, whether smiling or angry, was incredibly lifelike. Lu Huan's feelings for Shen Yueru were indeed deep and profound. A few traces of guilt also surfaced in my heart. Ultimately, because of my greed, I had interfered with the deep affection between them, which even death could not sever. So, there really are men in this world as single-minded as Lu Huan. However, just as the envy in my heart emerged, someone tightly hugged my waist from behind. A large hand began tearing at my outer garment.
Meng Yueru, don't leave me behind.
Scalding hot breath immediately sprayed on the back of my neck, making all my hairs stand on end. I abruptly stepped back, and without thinking, splashed the hangover soup in my hands all over his face. In the chaos, I actually caught a fleeting look of daze in those alcohol-clouded eyes. By the time I looked closer, Lu Huan had tightly closed his eyes and fallen into a deep sleep. I breathed a sigh of relief. I must have seen wrong. Alcohol really ruins things. Just carrying the longing for his beloved woman and muddling along like this. Wouldn't that be fine? I admired him as a true man. Why did he have to destroy that deep affection? What a pity. Recovering my senses, my gaze was candid, biting hard, and shook my head at him. Please go back, Marquis. The door was shut tight behind me, blocking out that heart-wrenching wail, and also shutting out that piercing gaze. After that, I never ran into Lu Huan and his son again. Those days, spent in the Marquis's household, were completely locked away in my mind. Later, the Shen family also sent someone to bring me home. My biological father was critically ill, and on his deathbed, he wanted to see me, his biological daughter, one last time. I didn't agree. Aside from my biological mother, no one in the Shen family was worth wasting my time on. I was very busy. Zhou'er's major exams were approaching. The teacher said Zhou'er had a good chance of passing. This child studied with absolute dedication, eager to make a name for himself and protect his family. But my heart ached that he was working too hard. When I helped him pack his bags, I slipped in some extra money. Yao Yao was now 16, growing up to be very generous and cheerful. The embroidery shop was managed very well by her. She even took on several girls as apprentices, teaching them embroidery skills so they could have a way to earn a living. The child was too sensible. When matchmakers came knocking, I turned them all away. I didn't want my daughter to marry so early, wasting her days in that tiny, broken-down courtyard. If in the future she meets someone she can build a life with and wants to marry him, I will support her. If her life doesn't go well, she can come home anytime. Here with me, it will always be her home.
What about you, miss? You are only 28 now. Do you really not want to find someone to marry?
Sister Hui asked casually, while hanging up the laundry.
The Lai family in town wants to marry you to their third young master. The Lai family has been in business for 3 generations. They're filthy rich. And then there is teacher Shui. The way he looks at you isn't exactly innocent.
I fanned myself and listened with a smile as Sister Hui gossiped. In Wencheng, everyone knows that in the West Courtyard lives an unmarried old maid who adopted 4 children. But when they talk about me, no one calls me an old maid. They all call me Miss Sujin. I just want to be Miss Sujin for the rest of my life, guarding my little home. As for getting married and having kids, who knows? Maybe in the future, I might meet a good man who suits my temper. No matter what I choose, I will never be afraid again. All because I have family, and I have plenty of courage and capital. Years later, Zhou'er went to the capital and became an official. Yao Yao also married into an excellent family. Her husband is completely devoted to her, and her mother-in-law loves her like her own. Xiaoxi went to the western mountains to study under a master, learning medicine. Sibao doesn't like studying, preferring to practice martial arts, which really gives me a headache. But he always loves to hug my arm and act spoiled, making it so I can never be hard on him. A few more years passed, and Wancheng was assigned a very young county magistrate. I heard this young Magistrate Lu has an extraordinary aura. Not only does he lack the arrogance of an official, but he also cares deeply for the common people. He is a rare good official, deeply loved by people of Wancheng. I also once caught a glimpse of him from afar. His appearance somewhat resembled an old acquaintance in my mind. I didn't take it to heart. As I walked away, I happened to hear someone asking him,
Your Excellency has a noble background. Why would you come to a small, rundown place like ours?
From afar, I seemed to hear him say,
I was foolish when I was young, and I lost the most important treasure of my life.
Did you ever find it later?
An intermittent sob made me put it out of my mind. Those past matters. Once they're in the past, they're in the past. Those old acquaintances, even if we meet, can only be strangers. A few years later, the Sujin embroidery shop in Wutong Alley became Wanzhou's most famous place. Sujin took in over 20 orphan girls as apprentices, teaching them to embroider and read so they wouldn't have to beg others to survive. Relying on their own skills, they could live a good life. The children all got married and established their careers, yet they all stayed by her side. Every holiday, the courtyard was always bustling with activity. When outsiders asked her if she regretted not turning back then, Sujin smiled and shook her head. In this life, what one should hold onto tightest is never someone else's return, but one's own life. Marriage has never been the only way for a woman to live. Relying on yourself and genuine family is the eternal support. Later she heard that Magistrate Lu spent his whole life in Wanzhou, finally understanding that not every missed opportunity gets a second chance. Realizing to cherish the people in front of you is this life's most important lesson.